The most disturbing moments in film aren't always the gory ones. Sometimes it's a realization, a sudden, awful truth that devastates a character beyond repair. In these scenes, we watch people break under the weight of now knowing something, and somehow that's worse than any jump scare. And obviously a major spoiler warning for all of the movies I will be discussing in this video, and also a heavy trigger warning because there are dark, heavy topics included in these films. The Others. In the aftermath of World War II, Grace Stewart lives in an isolated mansion with her two children, Anne and Nicholas. Both suffer from a rare condition that makes exposure to sunlight dangerous, so Grace maintains a strict household routine. Thick curtains block out any natural light, and a rigid set of rules governs their daily life to ensure the children are never accidentally exposed. The home is kept in near constant darkness, creating a tense, almost oppressive atmosphere that shapes every part of their existence. One day, 3 new servants seeking employment arrive. Mrs. Mills, an aging housekeeper, Mr. Tuttle, an elderly gardener, and Lydia, a young, mute girl. Not long after they settle in, strange things begin to happen. Anne claims to see people no one else can. A boy named Victor, his parents, and a blind old woman. At first, Grace dismisses it as imagination, but soon she begins hearing unexplained voices and footsteps herself. Grace becomes convinced the house is haunted. She finds an album of old photographs of the dead, learns of a past tuberculosis outbreak, and catches glimpses of doors mysteriously opening, a piano playing on its own, and the presence of something or someone unseen. Her rigid Catholic faith begins to crack under the weight of it all. In a moment of panic and desperation, Grace sends the gardener to inspect the nearby cemetery, hoping to find out if another family once lived and died on the property. She then heads out into the thick fog, desperate to find a priest to bless the house. But instead, she stumbles upon her husband, Charles, whom she had believed died in the war. He returns with her to the house, but something is off. He's distant, disoriented, and emotionally withdrawn. Within a day, he quietly vanishes again, claiming he has to go back to the front, and not believing his wife when she says the war is over. Meanwhile, the servants are clearly hiding something. The gardener covers up some gravestones with fallen leaves. The tension grows when Grace sees an elderly woman in her daughter's dress speaking in Anne's voice.
What have you done with my daughter?
Are you mad? I am your daughter.
Thinking it's a ghost, she attacks, only to realise she's actually hurt her daughter. Anne becomes terrified of her mother, and Mrs. Mills tells Anne that she's seen the strangers too, but explains they can't tell Grace yet because she isn't ready to face the truth. The next morning, Grace is jolted awake by the children's screams and discovers, to her horror, that every curtain in the house has been taken down, leaving Anne and Nicholas vulnerable to the sunlight. When the servants refuse to help search for them, Grace becomes suspicious, convinced they had a hand in it. Furious, she accuses them and demands they leave the house. But that night, the children discover that the hidden graves belong to the trio of servants, and Grace finds a photo proving the servants had passed 50 years ago during the 1891 tuberculosis outbreak. Upstairs, the family discovers that the elderly blind woman Anne had been seeing is actually a medium conducting a séance with Victor's parents. In that moment, the truth is revealed. The ghosts haunting the house are not strangers, but Grace, Anne, and Nicholas. Driven mad by grief and isolation, Grace had smothered her children with pillows and then took her own life.
Something about a pillow.
Is that how she killed you? With a pillow?
And Charles had died also, his confused and distant state explained by the fact that he didn't realise he was dead. Grace, overwhelmed, lashes out, ripping papers from the table in a fit of denial. But to the living, the papers simply appear to move on their own, confirming that Grace and her children are the spirits. Grace finally understands. The others in the house are the living family who recently moved in, and she, her children, and the servants are now part of the house as ghosts. She gathers Anne and Nicholas in her arms, tearfully confessing what she did. She had mistaken their ghostly return as a second chance from God. Eventually, the house goes up for sale again. Mrs. Mills tells Grace that they'll need to learn to coexist with the living, and that eventually they won't even notice them. She also reveals that the children, no longer bound by their physical bodies, are no longer harmed by sunlight. For the first time, the children enjoy being bathed in the sunlight coming through the windows, and they all watch as Victor's family packs up and leaves. What makes The Others so deeply unsettling isn't just the ghost story, it's the horrifying truth at its core. Grace's slow unravelling of the truth ends in a moment of unbearable clarity. She didn't just lose her children, she took them with her. And the very thing she feared was inside the house was inside her all along. Her realization that they're all dead and that she's the one responsible is quietly devastating.
We're not dead! We're not dead! We're not dead! We're not dead!
We are not dead. They're not
We're
dead.
not dead! We're not dead! We're not dead!
There's no dramatic punishment or divine retribution, no escape, just the chilling permanence of what she's done. She's trapped in the aftermath of her own violence, doomed to wander the halls of the home she once tried so desperately to protect, and now all they're left with is the eerie acceptance that this is their eternity. Twin Peaks, Fire, Walk With Me. In the quiet fictional town of Twin Peaks, 17-year-old Laura Palmer lives a fractured life. On the surface, she's the picture of perfection. Popular, happy, beautiful, the homecoming queen of her high school. But beneath the polished exterior, Laura is unraveling. For years, she has been tormented by Bob, a mysterious and terrifying presence who has been abusing her since she was 12. Haunted and trying to escape the horror consuming her, Laura turns to drugs. She dates her dealer, Bobby Briggs, sells her body at night, and secretly cheats on Bobby with another boy. When Laura discovers that pages are missing from her secret diary, she confides in Harold, a reclusive man that she met through her Meals on Wheels work. She insists Bob stole them, and warns that he's threatened to kill her if he doesn't let him be her.
What does Bob say?
He says he wants to be me or he'll kill me.
Harold tries to tell her Bob isn't real.
Bob is real. He's been having me since I was 12. And the diary was hidden too well. There is no other person who could have known where it was. He comes in through my window at night. He's real.
Laura suddenly becomes possessed, growling, "Fire, walk with me." Shaken, she regains her composure and hands Harold the diary, unsure if she'll ever come back. Later, during her Meals on Wheels deliveries, a strange old woman gives Laura a painting of an empty room. Her grandson cryptically warns her, the man behind the mask is in her bedroom. Laura rushes home and peeks inside her room, only to see Bob crouched by her dresser, laughing wildly as he searches the spot where she usually hides her diary. She flees the house in a panic, hiding in the bushes outside. Then, her father, Leland Palmer, calmly steps out of the door, and suddenly everything falls into place. In that moment of paralyzing dread and heartbreak, Laura realizes the horrific truth. Bob has always been her father. He's the one who's been abusing her for years. But even as the truth stares her in the face, she breaks down, unable or unwilling to fully accept it.
No, it's not him. No, it's not him. It's not.
Laura's realization is one of the most harrowing moments in Fire Walk With Me, not just because she uncovers the true identity of her abuser, but because it shatters the fragile reality she's clung to for years. The horror isn't just supernatural, it's deeply real and personal, buried in the unbearable truth that the person meant to protect her was the one destroying her. The line between Bob and Leland blurs, and with it, Laura's sense of self and safety completely collapses. It's the kind of realization that doesn't bring clarity or closure, only despair. The Vanishing. While vacationing in France, a young Dutch couple, Rex and Saskia, run out of gas and pull into a rest stop. Saskia makes Rex promise to never abandon her in a sweet vow, and they bury 2 coins at the base of a tree as a symbol of their romance. But when Saskia heads inside the gas station for drinks, she never returns. Rex's panic sets in as he frantically searches for her, but she's gone without a trace. The story then shifts focus to Raymond, a seemingly ordinary, well-off man with a wife, daughters, and a quiet life. But behind this facade, he's been meticulously planning something horrific. Obsessed with carrying out the perfect crime, he experiments with chloroform on himself, tests different abduction tactics, and even buys a remote property to use for his sinister purpose. After several failed attempts, such as posing as an injured man in need of assistance, he finally lures a woman into his car by pretending to be a travelling salesman. That woman is Saskia. 3 years pass, and Rex, still haunted by Saskia's disappearance, refuses to let go. He receives several cryptic anonymous postcards inviting him to meet with Saskia's kidnapper in a cafe, only for the man to never show up each time. Unbeknownst to Rex, the man behind the letters has been watching him sit at the cafe. Rex's new girlfriend Lineker tries to support him but eventually leaves, unable to cope with his obsession. Rex even takes to appearing on TV, begging the kidnapper to meet with him so he can finally have some answers. Raymond eventually approaches him and tells him he's the man he's looking for, but that he will only tell him what happened to Saskia if Rex comes with him. As they drive, Raymond remains eerily composed, almost enjoying the fact that he alone holds the key to Rex's torment, the agonizing mystery of what happened to Saskia. He begins to explain his twisted logic. Years ago, after rescuing a young girl from drowning, his daughter looked at him like a hero, full of admiration. But instead of feeling proud, Raymond felt something darker. That admiration meant nothing to him unless he could prove he deserved it. could prove himself of being absolutely incapable of doing anything evil, as black cannot exist without white. In his mind, true goodness only matters if you're capable of evil but choose not to act on it. So, in a cold and calculated attempt to test his own morality, he conceived the most horrific act he could imagine, because, as he puts it, good cannot exist without the shadow of evil, and he needed to know if he could cross that line. Raymond calmly recounts how he lured, drugged, and abducted Saskia, posing as a friendly salesman. Rex threatens him, but ultimately Raymond holds all the power. He says there is no evidence that connects him to the crime, and that if Rex killed him, he'd never know what happened to his girlfriend. He offers Rex a cup of drugged coffee and says that the only way to truly understand what happened to Saskia is to experience it for himself. Torn between dread and unbearable curiosity, Rex ultimately returns to the tree where he and Saskia buried their coins, and after digging them up, he gives in to the overwhelming burning need to know what truly happened to Saskia, and he drinks the coffee. Rex awakens buried alive in a coffin-like box. He screams for help, then laughs hysterically as it seems the years of torment from his grief and desperate need for answers, the reality of the situation, and the weight of his fate crash down on him. He satisfied his curiosity, but at what cost? He is now left to accept his inevitable demise and realize that he will die in the same fashion as Saskia, suffocating slowly, alone and afraid in the dark. The final scene shows Raymond back in his peaceful countryside home with his family. A newspaper in his car features a headline about the disappearance of Rex and Saskia. 2 lives vanished without a trace. What makes this story truly disturbing is not just the crime itself, but Rex's final horrifying realization. His relentless need for closure, his refusal to live without knowing, becomes his undoing. Raymond never forced him. There was no violence or threat towards him, just a simple, terrifying choice. Drink the coffee and find out what happened to Saskia, or walk away and never know. And Rex chooses the truth. That decision, so human, so desperate, leads him to the exact fate as the woman he spent years searching for. It's a chilling reflection on how obsession can consume a person, how the unbearable weight of not knowing can drive someone to willingly step into their own grave. OLDBOY. In 1988, Korean businessman Oh Dae-soo was arrested for drunken, disorderly behaviour. He's bailed out by his friend, only to mysteriously vanish moments later. Dae-soo wakes up in what looks like a run-down hotel room, only it's locked from the outside. It becomes clear he's been imprisoned, without explanation, trial, or even the identity of his captors. For 15 years, Dae-soo has been held in this private cell. Meals are delivered through a hatch, and he's routinely knocked out with gas whenever the room needs cleaning or when he tries to end his life. His only connection to the world is a TV, which informs him one day that his wife has been murdered, his daughter sent to foster care, and that he himself is the main suspect. The shock pushes him towards madness. To survive and keep his sanity, Dae-soo begins to train obsessively, shadowboxing and punching the walls until his knuckles harden. He tattoos a tally mark on his arm for each year he spends locked away, and he writes down every person he might have wronged, hoping to figure out who's behind this. Eventually, he begins digging a hole in the wall with a metal chopstick, planning his escape inch by inch. Just when he's nearly through, Dae-soo is suddenly released, drugged and left on top of a rooftop with no explanation. He's free, but still trapped in the mystery of why any of this happened. Disoriented and furious, Dae-soo begins hunting for answers. He meets Mido, a young sushi chef he recognizes from a cooking show he used to watch in his cell. They feel an instant connection. When an anonymous caller contacts Dae-soo and claims responsibility for his imprisonment, he taunts Dae-soo to discover why it all happened. Dae-soo faints, and Mido, feeling bad for him, takes him in and looks after him. Over time, they grow close, eventually developing a romantic and sexual relationship. As Dae-soo digs deeper, his past resurfaces. He remembers seeing a girl in high school, Lee Soo-ah, having sex with another student, her own brother, Lee Woo-jin. Not realizing the two were related, Dae-soo mentioned it to a classmate. Gossip spread, rumors of pregnancy followed, and Soo-ah, unable to endure the shame, took her own life. That brother, Woo-jin, is the man behind Dae-soo's imprisonment. Dae-soo finally confronts Woo-jin, who smugly hands him a photo album. Inside are pictures of Dae-soo, his wife, and their daughter as she grows up, until Dae-soo realizes in horror that the girl in the photos is Mido. Woo-jin reveals the final twist. Through hypnosis, he manipulated Dae-soo and Mido to meet, fall in love, and sleep together, father and daughter, without knowing. It was his revenge, to make Dae-soo suffer not just physically, but psychologically, to tear his soul apart as his once was. Devastated, Dae-soo begs Woo-jin not to tell Mido the truth. When begging fails, he cuts out his own tongue as an act of repentance. Satisfied, Woojin spares her the truth, but leaves Dae-soo to suffer. In the aftermath, Dae-soo seeks out the hypnotist who helped orchestrate the manipulation. He pleads with her to erase his memory of Mido being his daughter. The film ends ambiguously, with Mido confessing her love and the two embracing, while we're left unsure whether Dae-soo still remembers the truth, or if the memory has been buried for good. Even if you're not a fan of the hypnosis trope, because let's be honest, it can feel like a bit of a narrative shortcut most of the time, OLDBOY weaponizes it in the most nightmarish way possible. Dae-soo's realization is one of the most brutal gut punches in cinema. The horror here lies in the realization that his every step and every feeling was carefully manipulated to make him destroy himself from the inside out. Woojin doesn't just want Dae-soo to suffer, he wants him to know he was a puppet all along, orchestrated with such surgical cruelty. Not just to punish Dae-soo, but to make sure he lived with that horror forever. And Dae-soo wasn't even originally driven by malice. He was simply a teenager who spread gossip, and yet the consequences are unspeakable. So in a twisted act of penance, he mutilates himself, literally silencing the mouth that once spoke the words that started it all. Incendies. After the death of their mother Noelle, twins Jeanne and Simone learn her final wishes. In her will, she leaves behind 2 sealed letters, one to be delivered to their father, whom they believed was dead, and the other to a brother they never knew existed. To fulfill her request, the siblings must travel from Canada to the Middle East to uncover the truth of their mother's past. As Jeanne sets out on this journey, flashbacks begin to unravel Noelle's life. Born into a strict Christian Arab family, Noelle fell in love with a Muslim refugee and became pregnant. When her family found out, they murdered her lover and then nearly her in an honor killing. Her grandmother intervened, sparing Noelle's life but forcing her to give up the child. The baby was sent to an orphanage after being marked with a tattoo on his heel. Noelle was told to leave the village and build a new life, which she did, studying at a university and hoping to one day find her son. But civil war soon erupted, and when she returned to search for her child, she discovered the orphanage was destroyed. Her son had been taken by militias and turned into a child soldier. Traumatized further after witnessing a bus of Muslim refugees burned alive by Christian militants, Noelle joined a radical resistance group. As part of her mission, she posed as a French tutor and assassinated a high-ranking Christian leader. She was captured and imprisoned for 15 years. In prison, Noelle became known as the woman who sings, refusing to be broken. Her captors, enraged by her resilience, eventually brought in a notorious torturer, Abu Tariq, to silence her. He raped her, and she gave birth to twins while still incarcerated. A sympathetic nurse saved the newborns and later returned them to her. After her release, Noelle emigrated to Canada, raising Jeanne and Simone without ever telling them about their origins. Back in the present, the twins continue digging into their mother's past. They uncover the identity of their missing brother, named Nihad of May. He had been taken by a warlord, trained as a sniper, and eventually captured and reprogrammed by opposing forces to serve as a torturer, under the name Abu Tariq. In one of the film's most harrowing revelations, Jeanne and Simone realize the full extent of their family's tragedy. Their brother, Nihad, is also their biological father. He was the man who raped their mother in prison, without knowing she was his mother, and was the source of Noelle's deepest trauma. This is the truth that caused Noelle's stroke. Years later in Canada, she encountered Nihad by chance at a swimming pool, recognized the tattoo on his heel, and saw the face of her son and her rapist all in one. In the final moments, Jeanne and Simone locate Nihad in Canada and give him the 2 letters, one addressed to her father, the other to her son. Nihad, now aware of the horrors he had subjected his own mother to, visits her grave, left to carry the unbearable weight of what he's done. The revelation in Incendies is one of the most deeply disturbing moments I've ever experienced in a film. It's not just shocking, it's soul-crushing. When Jeanne gasps, when it clicks that their father and their brother are the same person, it's like the air is sucked out of the room. And that sound put such a pit in my stomach I felt physically ill. And of course you feel utterly heartbroken for Noelle. After surviving years of war, abuse and imprisonment, she finally begins to build a new life in peace, only for it to be shattered in an instant. The moment she saw her son, and realised who and what he also was, the trauma of the truth was so overwhelming her mind simply shut down. It's one of the most tragic fates imaginable. This is one of the heaviest films I've ever watched, and yet through all its horror it refuses to look away. It forces you to sit with the pain, the grief, the silence and the wreckage, because only then can you understand the cost of what war and hatred truly leave behind. Wow, and that's it. What a heavy video. If you guys have any disturbing realization scenes that come to mind, please do tell me in the comments, and yeah, bye bye.